It's nearly Christmas, and for those of you celebrating, you're going to want to check carefully under the tree because you might have gotten a contract to play right wing for Arsenal. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name's Elliot, the Black Man, Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Horrible night to sleep last night, early in the morning, and my mouth isn't matching what's in my head, but that's okay because what's in my head is usually pretty crap anyway, so maybe my mouth will come up with something good. Anywho, it is another 5 goals for Arsenal. 5 against West Ham, 5 against Sporting, 5 against Crystal Palace. When will Arsenal solve their attacking issues? What attacking issues? Well, we will come to that and maybe a few other things from this Palace game. We will also look ahead a bit, both to Ipswich and the January transfer window. Unfortunately, we are going to talk injuries, and there is a major one. And so this thrashing of Palace, as fun as it was, it does come at a heavy cost, and we'll talk about how we cope with that. So a lot to get to. Obviously, we had the instant reaction that you can go listen to. We're going to try to squeeze in our usual patron stuff this week, but it is a holiday, so, it'll be a little touch and go, but still going to try to get some stuff in. But the good news is, because January is around the corner, we will have scouting videos. And if you're not familiar with this, we put the videos up on the screen, we talk through them, but it's not YouTube comps. We use an actual scouting platform. We bring up the player, we bring up clips from the player that are not the things you're going to have seen in the highlight reel, not just the goals and assists. Although ideally we will sign someone who does the goals and assists, but that's another story. So yeah, you'll love it if you want to do it, or if not, you're here. The most important thing is I hope you are healthy and happy and have some time to spend with family this season, whether you are celebrating the holiday or not. It is a time of year when a lot of people get some time away from work and a chance to be with the people they love. So I hope that you have the opportunity to do that. Okay, here with me now, I'm spending time with people I love. Clive, hello.
Yeah, hello.
And Tim. Hey, Tim.
Hello there.
Good to see you both. Look, I want to do this. I want to start with the Saka and Sterling stuff because I think it's such big news. And to just go right into the game, I think buries the lead. The game was brilliant. There's lots of fun things to discuss within it, and we will do all of that. But let's talk about the injury first. Clive, news coming in that Saka's hamstring injury is pretty major, that he's going to be out a long time. I mean, we don't have an official word yet, but the way it's being talked about, I mean, literally, Mikel was asked, will he be back this season? Or was asked how bad, and he said he'll be back this season. Like, once a manager's talking that way, they're giving you some subtle hints. This isn't a 21-day, or this is an 8 to 10 weeker at least. And so we've got some work to do. Well, Raheem Sterling can step in. Oh, no, he can't. He's got a knee injury. Look, this season can just absolutely go away when it comes to some of the misfortune. And there are some people that say a Saka injury is not misfortune when a 23-year-old's played 250 games for Arsenal already, but that's another story. What's your reaction to the Saka injury, and how do you think we'll cope with it?
Right. It looks like I saw the press conference, and he was asked how long he'll be out for, and he said many weeks. Right. So, and then he was asked later on, has he torn the hamstring? And he went, yes. Right. So, and then someone asked him, would he be back before the end of the season? And then he was asked by the end of the season, and he said, yes, he'll be back for the end of the season. So with my doctor's head and the fact that we're all doctors now, we're doctors and coaches. That's what we do, isn't it? And basically, we are looking at a grade 2 hamstring probably, and that's going to be around 8 to 9 to 10 weeks. I think Reece Nelson has got one just now. He's out 10 weeks, so we can't even call him back. Right? So I wouldn't expect to see him until March, really, and. So that's my little prognosis based on what I've just read and just listened to the press conference today. So what does that mean for us? Does it mean we just all give up on the season, or does it mean we need to go into transfer market? Does it mean he needs to play here, he needs to play there? It probably means all of the above, doesn't it? We're going to be shuffling around, mixing and matching, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, seeing who it means something for. It's going to raise some stocks for some players, potentially, depending on what system that we end up in. So, yeah, this is probably, if you think about it, the 2 most important players. We're going to have them out for a similar amount of time in the same season, right? So Odegaard was it a 10-weeker, roughly?
2.5 months, yep.
Yeah. And
this one I think will stretch longer than that if I'm candid.
I think this one will be about the same. It'll be about the same. And yeah, we have to just get to March in without our player that affects most of our goals, most of our assists, most of our first chances that we have in the game. And it's a major part of our game plan because we have data now to let you know how much time to go up the left, how much time to go down the middle, and how much time to go out the right. And we're the most one-sided centric team in the league. And so everyone's smiling today, all our opposition. And we have a job to do, don't we, internally, about how we're going to cover this systemically and potentially in the market. So I find it really interesting, Elliot, joking. It's no joking here, but there are interesting questions being posed, and the response is going to be really interesting.
And what's interesting to me, I wonder if you polled the Arsenal fandom going into the season what they thought our point total would be in the league. I bet most people would have been around 89, 90, 91 points, just around that range, right? Maybe just north of 90. That was what we were hoping for. If you told those same people, Odegaard will miss 10 weeks and Saka will miss 3 months in separate spells, what that prediction might have looked like. Because I think I probably would have said high 70s points. I mean, those are, without question, our two best players in my mind. And the players that do the things that are most important in football, create and score the goals. I think if Liverpool lose Van Dijk and Salah for 2.5 months during the run-in, I don't think they will win anything. And that is exactly what we're being asked to do. Now, I'm not saying that as an excuse. I'm just saying we've really hit the bottom 5% outcomes this season in terms of the bounces of the ball and the referee decisions and the injuries. We've lost Rice, who's been basically unfit. By the way, no one's even mentioning that Ben White's having knee surgery, right? We just shrugged that off because, Timber's here. Well, if Timber and White were here, we'd be better, right? We wouldn't be playing, mix and match midfielders in fullback positions. So we really are coping with a lot right now. And that's the job, though, unfortunately. That is the job. The job this season, unfortunately, isn't here's your fully loaded squad, go win the quad. The job is here's your injury ravaged squad, go win what you can. So, Tim, the first question, what do you see as the best options inside of the squad as it stands right now? Mikel mentioned Jesus. He mentioned Kai. He mentioned, which I thought was interesting. He mentioned Ethan Nwaneri. He mentioned Martinelli. I think they're all options. How do you evaluate the options we have? No one will replace Bukayo Saka, but someone's going to have to play that position.
Yeah, definitely. Let's just address, first of all, no team has cover for their world-class players. Have a look at Manchester City at the moment. Who's Rodri's cover? How are they doing at the moment? Rodri's cover is basically Homer Simpson getting that little pecking bird to press the Y button on the keyboard over and over again. That's Man City losing a world-class player. Name me Salah's backup at Liverpool. Name me that player. They'd do the same thing as us. They'd use some combination of Diaz, Gakpo, Nunez. You have to go to internal options. There is no... If we had dedicated backup to Saka, he'd have played about an hour in the last 4 years. You don't have that. You have to, as we kind of tried to have to try to do with Odegaard as well. Because we had Fabio Vieira, and I guess the irony is we've sent Fabio Vieira out on loan because he can't get a kick of the ball. And this season, if maybe he'd hung around, he probably would have. But
the irony, Tim, all the guys we sent away and sold because they couldn't get minutes here would all be playing plenty this season. Reece Nelson be playing, Smith Rowe would be playing, Vieira would be playing. Yeah,
absolutely. We couldn't even get Fabio Vieira to hang around and do that role. So you have to be realistic. And let me further buttress that reality. It is exceptionally unlikely, I think, in January that we are going to find a better option than bit of Trossard, bit of Martinelli, bit of Jesus, bit of suck it and see with those players. I find it incredibly unlikely that that's going to happen. Bit of Nwaneri maybe. So essentially, we've got some options there, and we're just there's going to have to probably be some trial and error, and we're probably going to have to hope that the first thing we try works quite nicely. I guess the advantage maybe we've got that we didn't have when we lost Odegaard really was that when we lost Odegaard, because Arteta didn't want to play Nwaneri, wanted to protect Nwaneri minutes-wise, we really only had one solution and we had to stick with it when it stopped working. At least this time, let's say we play Martinelli for 3 games and he's good and then it fades, then we can put Jesus there, then we can put... there is more of an element of trial and error, but And so, I think that's about as good as any squad can hope for, to be honest. But I'm not going to kid you and say I think that's brilliant. I'm also not going to kid you and tell you that we're going to this is going to cost us points. It might cost us a cup because we've got a lot of cup games in January. There's a good chance it will cost us both. Like that, I think we have to confront all of the realities here. And one of the realities is this is really the first significant injury this player's ever had, right? So I'm not in the mood to rage against the club for not having another Bukayo Saka rather sitting there after 4.5 years, and injuries do happen sometimes. Maybe there's some introspection about the way he's been managed. I have to say I rather kind of doubt it at this stage. I just think injuries happen sometimes and they suck, and nobody goes through their career without one. At the same time, I'm not refusing to confront the reality of what this will probably do. And as we usually see, Elliot, when we lose players like this, you can muddle through for a couple of games. And I wouldn't mind betting that maybe against Ipswich we look okay, and we play Martinelli or Jesus there or something, and we look okay, and we win the game. We think, maybe this won't be so bad. But as we saw when Saliba was out that time, as we saw when Ødegaard was out that time, after a few weeks, once teams have worked out your answer to it, it gets sticky. It gets really sticky. That's exactly what we saw with Ødegaard. I think there's an excellent chance that's what we're going to see again here. So, but there's a chance for someone as well. Like we're talking about redemption arcs. Gabriel Jesus, well done for getting back on the horse. Will you bloody well stay on it? Because you might need to play pretty much every game. Martinelli, you've been hot and cold. You looked all right on the right against Palace. Can you find your redemption arc? Because I don't know how long Sterling's going to be out for. I have to say, I think he'd probably be bottom of the list of options anyway. Based on his usage so far, I think Martinelli and Trossard would play ahead of him anyway. Probably Jesus as well. I think he's going to be pretty much the last resort. But
yeah,
there is a redemption arc available for someone if they want it now. And Martinelli and Trossard are probably going to play. Havertz and Trossard and Jesus are probably going to play a fair bit. So we've got players there, and there's a few of them who probably owe us some performances. Now's your chance. This is a gift horse for you. Go and take it, please.
Yeah, I think the problem, when injuries happen, I think it's hard to realize all the chain reactions, right? Because if these injuries hadn't happened, when the cup ties came around in January, maybe Sterling starts instead of Saka, and that means, we can play, let's say, Jesus off the left, and you make some swaps and you move some things around, and we have 4 senior forwards now. Let's leave Nwaneri out just for a second. They're all going to play in every game. Every single one of them is going to play. We have Kai, Jesus, Martinelli, and Leo, and that's it. If you want to bring Nwaneri into it, that's fine. But now instead of starting Sterling, against Manchester United in the FA Cup, are you going to start Nwaneri? Maybe you feel that's a bridge too far. So now you're back to starting Martinelli, Jesus, and Kai every single game, or Leo. And that's it. And so you load these guys up with minutes. And you know where that hurts you? It may not hurt you right away, to Tim's point. It hurts you in the second leg of a Champions League tie when they've got those extra minutes in them they wouldn't have had otherwise, and when they need that 5% to win the Champions League tie like Leo did against Porto. That little bit isn't there because there's 200 or 300 more minutes in the legs than there would have been otherwise in cup ties or whatever the case may be. At night, on a Wednesday, up at Newcastle in the second leg of a League Cup tie that player probably shouldn't have been playing, but they had to. These are the chain reactions. And so I think it is an interesting option for Ethan Nwaneri, by the way, who I just ruled out, but he's maybe the most Saka analog of any of them. But to be fair, there is no Bukayo Saka in our squad or in the market. That player doesn't exist. Unless you think we're going to sign Salah or Vinny Jr., we're not replacing Bukayo Saka anytime soon,
I think you're right. Can I just say on Nwaneri and not to put too much on him, because I'm not that would be the golden bullet for me, because that's, to your point, Elliot, that's the least disruptive thing that could happen, that a player we essentially, not that haven't been using but haven't been starting, just comes in and takes it. Now, I think it's unlikely he's going to play every game or anything like that, but that would be the golden bullet, the least disruptive thing. And then we perhaps get less of the chain reaction you were talking about with our other attackers.
Everything Saka does, Ethan does, just not at the Saka level, right? He beats men. He's good off the dribble. He cuts in off his left. He's got a phenomenal left-footed shot and cross. So I don't know. He's an option. But the other thing it does, by the way, is it means, to your point, Tim, we just discovered Jesus again, playing center forward and thriving. Now you got to move him to the right. That kind of stuff. You find something that works, and then you got to break it again. It's like when Marino got injured. It's like when Odegaard got injured. It's like when Rice got injured. The midfield hasn't been the same at any point this season. You just don't find a set solution. And those are the risks that we're going to have. I do want to get into the game, but before we do that, Clive, let's have a little fun here. Injuries are no fun, but a lot of people are going to look at the Saka injury and the Sterling injury as essentially a requirement to the club to do what a lot of people feel they didn't do in the summer, which is properly reinforce the attack. And because they didn't do it in the summer, well, tough luck. Now you got to try to do it in January. Do you regard that as a requirement as well? And do you have some thoughts on how they might do that?
Yeah, I thought it was a requirement anyway, and not just because just seeing how the season was going and knowing how we ended last year with our offensive players looking really destroyed of any energy come the critical moment. And I just felt we were one light there. But I've always felt we were one light, regardless of that. And so yeah, I must admit, somebody that's sort of interested in tactical solutions, shall we say. I love looking at solutions. There are many things we could do for that optimal first 11, shall we say. Potentially with Jesus on the left and Martinelli on the right. That could easily be a solution with Kai down the middle. There are a lot of solutions out there for us, and we can argue about starting and ending games, etc. But when it comes down to it, you have to look at how other people see you. Right? So how do people see us? The player with the most threat, with the most output, with literally goals and assists, the one that dictates every single scouting meeting of the opposition has just gone. Right? Gone from our squad for 10 weeks. Let's say 10 weeks. And so that immediately affects them and how emboldened they feel about us and what we can do. And it's really going to be an interesting situation tactically about how we change. And that, I said it earlier, that sort of diversity to how we play could be a surprise, could be an advantage. And as Tim says, it could be an advantage until it's not. Until said player that's moved suddenly levels out on form. And then suddenly we need Bukayo to stick one in the top corner and he's just not there. Do you know what I mean? And that's when it comes down to it. But I am interested in the solutions. And there are a couple of players that I like out there that provide solutions, but I don't think we're going to get them in January, And I was already on the YouTubes this morning having a look around. And I had to look around at the kid at Bournemouth, Semenyo, and I looked at him, I thought, regardless of whether Bukayo Saka is in this club or not, you have something similar to what he has from a power and size and drive perspective. He can genuinely play both sides. And he's a very interesting player. And I looked at him and thought, so I closed my eyes and said to myself, if Saka was in the squad and fit and available, I'd like him anyway. Because because of his versatility and also the power aspect. So and I'm sure people are shouting Osimhen and shouting these names out down the screen. Gyökeres, they're all really, really fine players. But I do think having versatile forwards is what I've grown used to. And that versatility now is going to be really advantageous. Really advantageous. So we can't get away from the fact that we're in a situation where you've lost one of your prime assets. I also can't get away from the fact, Elliot, that as a club, we're at a stage where we need to win. And that has not gone away. Nobody cares about our misfortunes, I'm afraid. No one cares. Who's going to give us a pass? Our own fans won't give us a pass, right? So we have to maintain our ambition, and I do feel strongly that we need to go into the market to send the right message. Now, what that looks like, Elliot, I don't know. Yeah, I generally don't know what it looks like. But as long as that pathway is clear, is there an opportunity to bring back players like Vieira, Don't snigger at it. They're going to look internally first, aren't they? They're going to look at the resources that they own, that have been sent out on loan, and say, can they come back? They're going to look at their academy. We all know the player we're talking about. They're the first two places they're going to go. If it's advantageous for those players to be lifted up or brought back, we will do it because they are our assets that we've spent money on. So that's where we're going to go first. And then if that doesn't work, we're going to look outside. And I think that's where it's going to get exciting. The scouting videos, we better crank them up, mate. We better crank them.
Can I? Yep. This will possibly segue us into the actual game. I think if we're talking about solutions as well, this game might have shown one of them in that we did actually score 5 goals basically without Saka, and we were a lot more open because we're a bit more adventurous in midfield. That might have to be a solution for a lot of the games. We might just have to load the deck and say, right, we're playing all the attackers. Havertz is playing in midfield. Havertz, Odegaard, Jesus, Martinelli, Trossard, they're all playing because we haven't got, we can't be as tight as we usually are. And maybe we have to play a bit more basketball and load the deck, which is kind of what we did in this game.
Clive?
Oh, Tim nailed it. And I've just rewatched that game, Tim, and mate, the amount of times we had 3 people in that central space in the middle of the box. So that 5 up was there significantly, wasn't it? I mean, you could just see the bluey shirts everywhere, right? And but I also think this is a real test for Arteta now, because what if he decides to lean into his defence? What if he decides to say, you know what, I'm going to double pivot this. Most of my midfielders are fit. I could get a new right back in. And don't snigger at me, but you can see it, right? It might be easier to find a right back to cover Timber and make sure we got all our good defenders fit and ready to go, and then really say to people, we're not going to concede, and then maybe do a 6+4, if you know what I mean, 4 up and go that way, and really shut the back door. I think we've really got some versatility in this squad and on options, and I do think it'll be a test on which way Arteta goes. And I do think some of the recent attacking criticism, I think, has stung. And the last few games, we've looked really sharp and lots of variation. I haven't spoke to you yet, Tim, since Palace, but I'm so interested to hear your feeling of how it looked in those conditions that I think maybe people underestimated, and how it looked structurally and chaos-wise. I really want to get the feeling in the ground how it felt. I'm interested to hear that, because I think we can go any direction, go ultra conservative or go madhouse chaos and just hit them hard with 5+5. We can do that, and we've got the players, right?
Yeah, I would just say, like, this game is a little bit of a dangerous one to analyze in terms of how we solve this problem, because you can't legislate for what the opposition choose to do. Palace chose to put 5 players up in our half, trying to block our progression, and played a bit of football with us. And so there were spaces for us to attack and ability to turn them around and create numerical advantages. Like, the solutions that worked in this game might look really silly against another Everton type opponent who puts 10 men in their own box and says, try to pick the lock. And that's really where I worry about the Saka absence, right? I think our game model and our talent is sufficient to still win almost all the games we play against teams that try to play us, because I really think we're excellent. It's the teams that don't play us. A game model never scored a goal, right? So the teams that don't play us, that's where individual brilliance becomes a little bit more important. And so it is going to come down to how we solve those kinds of problems. I think we will have plenty of time to talk January window, but I do want to at least get you guys on record for this. Tim, would you buy Marcus Rashford?
No. No, I don't think I would. The salary, the age, and the fact that there's a few United managers who just, there doesn't seem to have been a magic bullet with a coach. It's like 3 different coaches now that he seems to have messed about. So, no, I wouldn't do it.
2 seasons ago, he was pretty elite. He put up a pretty elite season, both by underlyings and goals and assists. Other than that, he really hasn't done it. He had one other 17-goal season, but I think he got there on 6 penalties as well. So I think that was an 11-goal season. I mean, he's had the one 17-goal season where he also had a bunch of assists. That one was really good. He is getting into that late prime-ish area. I'm not worried about his age so much as his hunger. The history of big star players swapping big clubs at this stage of their career, I don't think is very good in general. Like, make no mistake, Sterling's older than Rashford. Sterling's also better than Rashford. He has been a better Premier League player than Rashford. He is one of the greats all time in the Premier League. And we got him for next to nothing. This would be a commitment, a contract, a big wage, a big personality, a late prime player. Does he have that hunger? Is he going to do all the things Mikel wants him to do? Is he even good enough? Now, the reason I have sympathy for the club is you might say, no, go get a Nico Williams. Nico Williams has 1 goal this season. He's playing worse this season than he did last season. His underlyings aren't very good. He's shooting less, he's dribbling less, he's scoring less. Like, it just isn't as easy as we want it to be because all the big name players have question marks around them, including Rashford.
And he's never played on the right either.
I think what you do then is you'd lean into, Jesus off the right or Martinelli off the right or Ethan off the right, and he'd play through the center off the left. Clive, I think you would do this. Am I right?
I don't dismiss it. But hey, look, you know what I'm like. I'm a softie. I'm a softie coach. I think I can save anybody. Any player that's walking a straight line, I think are savable, right? So I've always liked this player. I don't know all the backstory though, Elliot. There's rumours and things coming out of Manchester. I'm not close enough to really understand that. And by the way, if Arsenal were to do it, and it's a big if, and I'm not sure they will, the numbers would have to work massively. Again, we're talking about a player that's not at the top end, so why we're going to expect top end money, and they're going to have to either player takes a pay cut or Manchester United make it financially favourable for another club to take him, right? So the ability to pay for that deal needs to be done properly end to end. But you know me, I've always wanted that type of player on the left-hand side, right? If Saka's on the right, a centre forward, and that type of wing forward, that Mane type scorer, striker that can play wide, is the type of player that's in my ideal 11. So I don't reel away from it as much as other people do, but I totally understand if people do, and maybe that's down to my just lack of knowledge and some of the rumours that are out there. But I also think he's very recoverable in the right environment. And we've seen it with Kai Havertz, who was not at his best. He's come into the environment at Arsenal, and it's worked for him. We look at, I don't want to mention his name, but I do think Mudryk would have been better in our environment than he is in the Chelsea environment. The environment's eating him up. And I just think there's still a player there. He's 27 years of age, and I do think there's a player there. That could be naive, wishful thinking, but that's the way I am, right? Got to speak my truth. That's the way I am. I've always think we can cover players. That's why I wasn't against the Sterling deal. I wasn't against it, but now he's hurt himself. I'm wondering if that's a situation that we need to step away from. I'm sure if you took a loan deal on Elliot, every loan deal would have a break period in the window, right? So I'll be looking at that and I'll be thinking, do we need to break it to go and use that 100 grand somewhere else, right? Because if the person's not there at the critical time, if I sorry mate to keep going, but if I said to you, we've got Sterling for one job, the first job it would be to back up Bukayo Saka. The moment Saka gets injured and the backup's got injured, why are you paying him money so you can get your physio? It's business, right? You got to chop it, and if you can, and move on and retool elsewhere.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we could do this for the whole pod, and we will be doing this for a whole pod on the next one, and probably for several to come in January. So have no fear. We will be doing our director of football pods again for patrons, and we will be doing scouting videos. So there's going to be plenty of transfer stuff to do. I know that's what everybody cares about, but we did win a game 5-1. And we did get more goals from Gabriel Jesus, who looks like, he's been I think he's ingested the soul of Pele or something. He just looks amazing, which is great news. And we found a little something with Martinelli on the right. So there's a lot here to get excited about. Tim, the interesting thing is the first half of this game did my head in, because on the one hand, we had chances and Jesus looked brilliant and we're creating openings. And on the other hand, Raya's given the ball to the opposition and Saliba's given the ball to the opposition, and we're conceding chances for fun. And so this was a very unusual game compared to what we've been used to, especially the Fulham and Everton games. I want to just get your general take on play. Do you think we changed something that made ourselves more open to create more attacks, or do you think it was more about Palace's willingness to not play a deep block? How do you see the way the back and forth developed in this game?
Yeah, it's a bit of both, isn't it? It's certainly, and I think it was led by the form of Gabriel Jesus, the whole like Jesus and putting Havertz in midfield. I'd be interested to know from Mikel Arteta whether there was an element of, well, Palace, they commit numbers. They play with a back three as well, but they do commit numbers forward, but they have their three centre backs, and maybe he thought, I do need that extra attacker in there. I need that little bit of extra physical presence. But it...
Do I get any credit for saying I thought he'd go to Kai in midfield and Jesus up front on the
no,
Thursday pod? Or,
No, absolutely. And I mean, it giveth and it tooketh away, right?
Yeah.
And I think also the thing is, if you're going to play like that in future, and I understand why it couldn't happen this time because of the fitness of the guy, it can't be Partey that's your single pivot. It has to be Rice, right? If you're going to play a single pivot, it has to be Declan Rice just because he can cover the ground and Thomas Partey can't. And I think we saw that with the goal, and that made us a bit more open. But what's kind of interesting about this, Elliot, to your point that you made on the last podcast, this was the plan initially, Jesus up front and Havertz in midfield. So, obviously things changed and Arteta went with the way the wind was blowing and everything like that. But one of the things I'm really interested in, that we don't know the answer to, and Arteta's not going to tell us, we're going to need games to see this. I'd be really interested to know, because I came away, first of all, at Selhurst Park, you basically can't see a minimum of 40% of the pitch, which actually kind of helps when it's a tetchy game, because there's quite a lot of the time you have literally no idea what's going on. But so to answer Clive's point about the kind of the chaos and the feeling, genuinely really difficult in that stadium because there's just so much you literally can't see. But I'd be really interested to know whether Arteta thought, do you know what? I'm going to go more attacking and I'm going to be willing to be more open and I'm going to bet that in a basketball game we'll beat them. And I'd be really interested to see if he repeats that approach. And, bringing it back to the Saka thing, we beat Man City at home last year without Saka. And actually, I think that was, I don't want to use the word easier, that's not the word I'm going for, but it was less complicated because we wanted a cagey game against City and we wanted to push the margin. And it was, this game's going to finish 0-0 or 1-0 either way. And we're gonna make the game that way and hope it finishes 1-0 to us. And it did. Whereas, in a game like this, bit more chaotic, bit more open, like, Saka wasn't really involved in the goals when he was on, and then we scored without him. And I'd just love to know whether there's going to be an element of horses for courses, and whether there are going to be now some games where he thinks, screw it, if we concede 2, I'm fine with that because we might score 5. And as much as that hurts my soul, winning 5-2 is better than drawing 0-0 like we did against Everton, or drawing 1-1 like we did against Fulham. So that's what I'm really interested in. What I'm really interested in is this just because Jesus was playing really well and he's thinking, I have to play him, and I support that. I think you do have to play him, particularly because, let me tell you, tap the mug, I wrote about this today, Gabriel Jesus is the most confident footballer that has ever existed. On the up and down side of that ramp, he is someone who, for better and for worse, cannot channel his or harness his emotions. And when it's good, right? As we're seeing right now, he feels good. But when it's bad, the world is a dark black place. And, he's scribbling poetry and wearing black nail polish. And so, like, I'm just really curious, and I don't think we'll know for a couple of weeks whether this was, I wasn't planning for this game with Jesus, but he kind of went and scored a hat-trick and blew up my plan, so I had to play him. Or was it, screw it, we've had a couple of games now where we've drawn, I don't want to draw again, and if we don't keep a clean sheet in the process, I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be an interesting one to see. Clive, let's just talk Jesus then. Like, his first goal is taken brilliantly. It is Saka who creates the first goal. As usual, it gets all the way through to him. He slots. The second goal is off a corner. It's brilliantly curled and beautifully taken. His header that hits the post is really well taken. He did have a big chance missed, but it's more that he hit it too well. He didn't scuff it or sky it. He hits it at the keeper and it results in a goal. It's not just that, though. He's back to doing the stuff that he wasn't doing. He's staying in the attacking third. He's found the right areas of the pitch to occupy. I take notes when I watch to try to know what I'm watching. And 3 minutes into the game, guys, 3 minutes. It's the first note I took in the game. Jesus wins the first long ball. Do you remember it? There was a long ball right at the beginning, and he wins it and he heads it back, and then he turns and spins off and runs. And I thought, he's on it. He's on it. And he was on it. Clive, rediscovering this player could not have happened at a better time. Just your general thoughts on the Jesus performance and where he's at right now.
Yeah, he's right back there, right? To pre-World Cup Jesus. Literally he's right back there. The only thing that's different is that it's a bit colder at the moment. It's not summer, it's winter. That's the only thing that's different. He's super sharp. I do think the whole game really gave us something different. And regardless of the players in the room, I use the phrase behind the ball players. We had less players behind the ball and more people ahead of the ball. And that to me was a joy on my screen. I just saw more people up the pitch. And I do feel we went through a phase where we, particularly like Bournemouth, we were behind the ball too much with false control. And one thing Jesus can do is combine when there's close players around him. He's very good at that. And some of his little flicks around the corners were just a delight. I did see that comp, Elliot. I said, I'll wait to see the comp of Jesus. I've got that comp bookmarked, mate, tucked away, because it's like some of his round the corner passes, but just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. The way he brought one ball down left-hand side, he bounced it to himself. I never doubted he wasn't going to control it. He's so funny football. It's an amazing game. You see a player, you watch him every week, you watch him trundle around, and then suddenly the ball comes into him when he's confident, and none of us feel he's going to miss a target. None of us feel he's going to miscontrol it. Why do we all feel this? This is not unique to me. We all feel it. When that shot came in, I'm thinking, this is going on target, this. And bang, it's in off the post. And it's just great. The goal, the Declan Rice goal, when it's just a flick clearance out, he then out sprints the defender to the wing. He could have let it go. We were 4-1 up at the time. Let it go, son. Let it go. Make it pass back to the keeper. Nope, I'm going to win that race. Knock it off. Calafiori, he stuns it on his outside of his left foot. And we score a picture book goal. And the next minute, Declan Rice is giving a celebration in front of Tim in the way end. It's like, well, how has this happened? Generally, we're all pretty experienced of watching football. The 0 to 100 is as stark as I've ever seen. As ever seen in my watching life. This is incredible, and I hope it continues. The joy on his face, I mean, gee whiz. I said this earlier, and I didn't realise at the time for the League Cup game that he walked out on the pitch of his daughter. Whoever did that, they need a raise at the club. Whoever did that, give them money, because it triggered something in him, right? And so here we are now. So if he doesn't score against Ipswich, we can just put it down to the fact he likes playing against Crystal Palace, and we got to go into the market.
Do you know what they've got to do in the next game, Clive? Like Gabriel Jesus, very close to his mother, and he does the telephone celebration. Hello, Mai, which means hello, mum. So next game, let's get his mum out on the pitch, and if that means she has to start on the right wing, then I'm up for it.
Basically, Albert can
whatever
get out
works.
Because Jesus, his mum, is sitting next to Mikel, but do you know what I mean? And that's basically it. So you're absolutely right, Tim. Tim, you know this player for a long, long time. And joking aside, he is that player, isn't he? He is that player driven by emotion, and we've seen it all now. We've all seen it. So so pleased with him. So pleased.
Yeah, and like. I will tell you, I mean, for the people that care about data and stuff like that, I mean, this is among our worst defensive performances from a data standpoint this season. This was just not your typical Arsenal game. And I do just want to say, like, outcome-based analysis can get you into really tricky areas, everybody. We scored 5 goals in this game. We could have conceded 3 or 4. The fact of the matter is, it didn't go for us against Everton. Odegaard had 3 good chances in the box. and he couldn't score any of them. But it wasn't just that he didn't score them; the balls wouldn't fall to us. And not to put too fine a point on this, but the first goal, the Saka cross comes into the middle of the box, and it falls. And it falls right under the foot of Jesus, who slots. And the corner kick goal, Partey slides it back, and somehow Jesus finds a tiniest little sliver of a space where the shot's not blocked and it's not saved. And now that's quality. Again, I'm not taking it away. The Kai Havertz goal, the ball hits the post. It could hit the post and go out. It hits the post and comes back. The Martinelli goal, that's a big chance missed by Jesus that happens to fall to Rice, that he happens to shoot back into the 6-yard box. It happens to deflect to Martinelli, and Martinelli scores. Now, let's be clear. These things happen because we have more players in the box. We're crashing the box. We're in the right zones. But there's other days where the ball doesn't bounce your way. And I want, just so people don't think I'm writing off this performance or excusing other performances, this was great. This was dynamic, effective, high-quality Arsenal. But I do think we've been on the wrong side of variance in some games. In this game, it kind of came back because Saliba gives the ball straight to a Palace player and Raya saves brilliantly. And Raya gives the ball straight to a Palace player and we get away with that as well. So, Tim, just briefly on some of the nearly moments, and the goal we did concede, like there were some, I think Phil on social media said, was Saliba at the team Christmas party the night before? Like, he snapped out of it and became Saliba again. But there were just some moments there that had you kind of shaking your head for their goal and for some of the giveaways. Do you want to just speak briefly on some of the sloppiness and some of the ways we made it a little nervy in the first half? Second half's a different story.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're totally right that we were, for once, on the end of the positive variance.
Saka injury notwithstanding, we should.
Yes, yeah. More like run of the ball stuff. You're absolutely right. Like, I don't think there's an enormous difference between this and the Fulham game. Performance rather. Probably a bit more control against Fulham. Probably a bit less threat. But you're quite right. Like some stuff went for us in this game. I think maybe when I reflect on some of the errors like passing out from the back, maybe again that's a kind of consequence of a single pivot. Again, maybe you've got. I'd have to go back and look at like the actual build-up shape, but when you've got a double pivot there's one more guy to pass to, isn't there? And wouldn't surprise me if some of that structure changed a little bit. And we were playing with a left, but as much I think Lewis-Skelly had a really, really good game. But that's a guy we don't usually play with as well, and he's still learning. And little things like that can knock you out. Sometimes it can just be a bad day. Sometimes you can just mess up, for want of a better word. So, but like definitely the variance was on our side, and we should absolutely acknowledge that. I spoke to my brother-in-law as a Palace fan, and we were both kind of like, that was never a 5-1 game. I didn't come out feeling like that was a 5-1 game. But then, like, when I came out the West Ham game a few weeks ago, I was like, how the hell did they get 2? Do you know what I mean? It's just like, that was a 7-0 game that we won 5-2. And like, I think when you say that about a game like this as well, we need to keep that in reserve, because there might be another 0-0 draw down the line where actually we play fine and it just doesn't go for us, and then we get to say that almost. So like I think that there may be just a couple of structural things that changed, and like I said, I'd be really interested to know how much Jesus's hat-trick kind of interrupted the plan maybe for this game. Like, I don't get me wrong, I don't think they started like really training for this game until after the League Cup game, but it wouldn't surprise me if Arteta had an 11 in his head for this game. Jesus goes and scores a hat-trick, and it's like, well, I can't drop that guy now. But Havertz doesn't get on the pitch in the League Cup game, so he's nice and fresh and all of that. So I suspect it was just a little bit that something happened on Wednesday night that took Arsenal by surprise. We rolled with that punch, which I think we absolutely should have. And probably Rice's fitness has something to do with it as well. But in terms of the variance as well, just having more guys in the box, like that header hits the post and it comes to Kai Havertz. Like, if Declan Rice was starting left 8, I know he goes and scores a goal, so maybe it makes it a moot point. But is he standing there? Is Marino standing there?
No, just to be clear, that's really good from Kai. Like, I don't know that I thought Kai was brilliant in this game, but he reacts fastest, and like, it wasn't even close to offside, by the way. And he does really well to react to that. That's striker's instinct.
But he's standing there in the box, right? He's not outside the box on the edge of it. It's second striker stuff. So yeah, I think there was an element of give and take, definitely.
And it, look, one of the things that's difficult is when you're so used to, I think we face the lowest defensive line height in Europe. And so when a team plays a different way, you have to learn to solve the problem. And so Palace did this really interesting thing. They put 3 up with 2 right behind them, all pretty central. And it was a block of 5 that Saliba and Gabriel and Timber were trying to pass around. And we didn't figure it out right away. Now, when we did figure it out, we had them running back to goal and we had numerical advantages. And so it worked out really nicely in that respect. But that's a different thing. We don't face that very often. And I thought, sort of brave and interesting of Palace. But let's be honest, the teams that are brave against us, they usually get slapped.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in a run right now where we're slapping teams a little bit,
But this also might be instructive for us as well, because why are Palace doing that? They lost a massive attacker in the summer in Elise, and they've lost a bit of threat. So they've basically gone, instead of having 4 forward, we're going to have 5 forward because we need 2 guys to replace Elise. So, and they didn't have Eze in this game as well. So, they, in a way, they're probably grappling with the same thing we've just been talking about.
Interesting point, Clive. One thing that I think is really great is how we found Myles Lewis-Skelly at left back, and no one's even talking about Zinchenko at this point because Myles Lewis-Skelly looks fine. And what Myles Lewis-Skelly's development has allowed us to do is keep Timber on the right, where I think he's much more comfortable. And holy cow, was he unbelievably good in this game. And so the Myles Lewis-Skelly development allows us to use Timber in a way that I think is more effective. And that made a big difference in this game. So we're all very excited about Ethan Nwaneri, but Skelly deserves a lot of credit. I mean, they pressed him. And I think he showed that he can stand up to the physical challenges, which a lot of young players, that's where they struggle. So were you as impressed as I was with Myles Lewis-Skelly and see the way that has a real benefit on our right-hand side in the absence of Ben White, so we can put Timber there?
Yeah, I don't just look at it from that perspective. The fact that he suits games when you want to go. He suits Arteta's Arsenal because he can look after the ball, right? And he's showing less and less defensive vulnerability. So he can play a part of the build-up and he can play a part of our defence. The defending wide on the touchline, he's very proactive. He doesn't want to get turned around and run. But he's very aggressive on the front foot. And I do think it's interesting how he built up. But if anything, I thought he could have inverted a little bit more because what was happening was we sort of wanted to suck people into us a little bit and then into have parties of single pivots, but he needed a little bit of support. So Odegaard was starting a bit high and he was dropping back, and Kai stayed a bit higher so that if we did need to go longer, we could hit him with a longer ball. So, but Odegaard has got many, many strengths, but if he's facing his own goal, protecting the ball is not one of them. He can get pushed off it. And so if anything, I want to see Myles, who can protect the ball, be a bigger part of the build-up. If we are going to do this thing now, where we're going to play a much more of a high 8 and leave a single pivot, whatever happens, the person next to that single pivot, whoever it is on the day, will need to play a real important part of the build-up. So, and I actually feel, I think Myles is massively changing physically, literally by the hour, it feels like. And he's really becoming part of this group. He's a 60-minute player, and he was excellent in that time and really started to make people look at him in a different way. And I do think that with building our squad, he is positioning himself significantly in our squad next season for definite, with a significant role. But I will say, just because I'm going to say it, when Calafiori came on, I thought the physicality levels went up again. They went up again, and that whole left side of him and Rice together became massively dominant. And that I thought they were excellent, really attractive, really strong. And all of a sudden, the central areas looked better because we were winning the bounce against a Crystal Palace team that were fantastically physical and front-footed, very big bodies. To see Saliba stay next to a bloke that's small, where he was smaller than him, is not often not a sight you actually see. I think it unsettled us, unsettled our build-up, and it's just really quite strange to see them unsettled. But then they work through it, right? So going back to Myles, we've lost a lot this season, haven't we? We've lost a lot, but we found this kid here, right? And he's gonna shut down a career or two, from people who are established. He is, And this is like, this is massive stuff, right? Massive.
Yeah, I mean, right now, he's gone past Zinchenko for me as a player we want to invest in and give time to. I think he's closer to Calafiori than he is Zinchenko at the moment. That's my feeling on it. And without Ben White, we really need Timber on the right. And I just can't praise Timber enough. So I love what we're seeing there. It was interesting. Look, David Raya was fantastic in this game, by the way. I mean, I know he had the giveaway, but he made a number of very important saves, claimed some crosses as he always does. And I think he also had the passing that we expect him to have outside of that one error, because the one thing that was happening is Palace were also going long a bit. And if Saliba has a weakness in his game at the moment, I think it's long straight balls with, big physical center forwards. Like I think he does sometimes struggle to read the flight of the ball or position himself right to win those. And they were winning those long balls, winning the second ball, and Raya had to make some saves. And you know what? Like, that's okay because we scored 5 goals, but just something to keep an eye on. So Tim, the second half starts and we give up a pretty big chance early, and Mikel makes some maybe earlier subs than we're used to seeing. And Kai comes off and Declan Rice comes on. And I will say this about Kai, I think he had a mixed game. I think we saw in the attack what he adds from that left 8 position is another presence in the box, basically a center forward's instinct from a midfield position. I also think we saw that there's some build-up and recovery issues with Kai in terms of the clarity of purpose of him understanding what he's meant to do in that role. But boy, oh boy, did Rice have it. This is, for me, the best Rice performance we've seen this season. One of the best since he's arrived at the club. That's how much I rate it. I thought he was back to his absolute effervescent best, carrying the ball in big spaces, dominating the duels, confident around the edge of the box. He had the shot that leads to the Martinelli goal. He has the shot where he scores himself. He also had a lasered cross. If you remember, he pinged one over to Martinelli that Martinelli heads back across the box that very much could have been a goal itself. He showed all of the capabilities. And I just think based on that, my expectation would be that we're going to see Declan Rice play 8 in the next game, with maybe Partey deeper and Odegaard at right 8. But boy, oh boy, did Rice make a difference to me. This game went from a back and forth 3-1 to a dominant Arsenal 5-1. And I have Rice as the sort of critical fulcrum of that change in dynamic. What about you?
Yeah, even from a poor vantage point, peering through like multiple poles and stuff that's in your way at Selhurst, you could see it. And I think also, sometimes when you see a player all the time, you sometimes forget, it's hiding in plain sight what they actually do. But then when Arsenal finally have a bit of a chaotic game and then they put Rice into it, you go, yeah, this is all the stuff that doesn't usually happen. And look at that. It's stopped happening again. Now he's back. Like, you realize what a load bearing wall he is. And by the way, as well, I think one of the things we should say is like he played that 8 role a lot last season. And I think, people have got their reservations about that. Is that his long-term role? Blah, blah, blah. All of which I think are absolutely valid discussions we've had many times. His output was still really good in terms of goals and assists last season. Like he chipped in with a pretty high number of goals that you'd have looked at and gone, yeah, that's not bad actually for a number 8. So, and like he does that in this game as well. He comes up with a really good goal. So, but yeah, like it was lockdown time, wasn't it? Like him and Calafiori, gives us a little bit of muscle, albeit when he went down for treatment again, I was like, Christ's sake, like, can this guy ever get through like even 20 minutes of a game?
Can we stop for a minute though?
Yeah.
That could have been a red card challenge and his ankle turned over. And I actually think it's a credit to his flexibility that he was okay. Because if you did that to my ankle, I'd be having surgery today. So let's just give credit where it's due. Like that
100%.
Wasn't like a boo-hoo, I'm hurt. That was a orange card challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but yeah, like when Rice came on, it both simultaneously, it locked the game down from a Palace point of view, but also like we didn't lose any of our attacking threat, and not just because he scored a goal, but because he carries the ball. And also I did think this was kind of his kind of game as well, because Palace trade a lot. They kind of almost tried to do that Nottingham Forest thing where they've got big, strong striker like Mateta, he's good at that. Like, and we saw that in the League Cup in midweek. Like, he gives defenders problems. He's incredibly strong. He's very difficult to move. And what Palace do, as you saw, is they try and put bodies around him, because usually you need a couple of guys to try and hold him off. And they kind of do that thing that Forest do, where they go to Chris Wood and then they like surround him with players like Gibbs White and Elanga to try and get the scraps and the knockdowns. And scraps and knockdowns are like a staple part of Declan Rice's diet. And he loved all that. He was just picking up those loose balls all day, and then he had the space to gallop into. And but I think largely, Elliot, the thing is, I think you're right. This is probably his best performance of the season, but I do think there's also a strong element that he does that stuff all the time, and to the point that we've almost stopped seeing it. And when we had Now or without it, it was like, it's a bit like, I don't know if anyone else gets this. If I don't have a bottle of water on public transport, my mouth goes birdcage, right? But when it really, really does. But when I have it, it doesn't, and I don't touch it. It's almost like sitting near like a toilet on public transport. If it's there, you don't need it. And I almost feel like, sorry to compare Declan Rice to a public toilet, but I'm going to stick with that analogy.
Well, I hope we use him with the frequency that public toilets get used over the remainder of the season, because we're going to need him. I just think, I just think teams don't contest the midfield even that much against us. When a team just sits in their own defensive third, sometimes Rice has a lot less to do. But this game had a bit of a midfield contest, and he just showed you're not going to win that with me in there. So that was exciting. By the way, since we mentioned the nearly red card challenge on Calafiori, I will just say, not to set you off, Tim, but there was a challenge by Estupinian in the West Ham Brighton game, I think it is. That was one of the really bad challenges you will see, and it was a yellow, and VAR didn't upgrade it. And Tim has made this point, but like, VAR sees themselves as accountants. Oh, a touch after the whistle. Oh, we have to send you off for that. Oh, hey, I think this foul on the halfway line should be upgraded to red. But when it comes to protecting players, they have no interest in doing it. And it was a horrendous challenge. And players really lucky not to be more injured, and it should have been a red. So they continue to make no sense to me. The one thing that can sometimes happen with players is you just to get them out of a rut. Sometimes you just change something. And Martinelli moved over to the right-hand side in this game, Clive, and that was a really interesting look for him. The theory of the case is we like our players cutting in on their stronger foot and shooting or crossing with those in-swingers. But it hasn't really worked for Martinelli on the left much this season. Once he moved to the right, you could see he can beat a player to the byline pretty easily, but now he's crossing with his stronger foot. He did have, some really bright moments from the right. We did see him on the right in the final game of the season against Everton last season, where I thought he was bright. So this is certainly an option for moving forward. But what did you think of Martinelli in general from the right, and the idea that maybe this just gives him a different way to try to break down a defender?
Yeah, he looked fine there. He's a good player, right? And I think he's always seen himself as a left winger based on what I've read, but he has had time on the right, and he's always done okay. Remember the little goal he scored against Newcastle a few years back when Tommy Yasu clipped over the top and he volleyed it in front of the keeper? He has had moments out there, so it's not a total surprise. I think it's all about what we do as a group, as a front end group. And with Martinelli now, I do think he's been listening to the murmurings of the crowd being frustrated with him in some of his one-on-ones. And there was a lovely interview with Ian Wright after the game, where obviously Ian Wright had spoken to him offline and really given him some encouragement. It just shows you again back to where he was with Jesus. He's a young man, right, under significant pressure consistently by tens of millions of Arsenal fans all around the world to just want them to be brilliant all of the time. And we all do. And we forget how they are, how young they are. And the weight doesn't mean anything, mate. When you're feeling pressure, you're feeling pressure. You're not looking at you're not looking at your bank account. You're just playing, right? So I'm really pleased to see him revert to some level of confidence at a time when we need him to. And so from the right, from the left, I don't worry too much about him. I think for him, it's just doing things instinctively. Literally, end of team talk. There you go. Be instinctive. When you see it, go for it. Go. Don't think. Be instinctive. If you want to chop it inside and take a left foot shot, do that. If you want to go to the byline and cross it, do that. But do it instinctively, do it with quality. Don't think. The moment you think, that's when you look average. That's when you start to hesitate, to carry, to drag it around like a suitcase. Carry, touch, back to fullback. That's because you're thinking. So stop that rubbish, stop thinking, and use your God-given gifts of elite speed and repeat sprint ability, defensive capability and awareness most of the time, and that's what you got to focus on. So you got to invest in his strengths. So whether it's left or right, I'm not bothered, but instinct, quickness of decision and quality, I am bothered. And can I get him back to the days when Elliot used to say he's a shot monster? That's all I get, because that's when you really know. Again, where did he find himself today? Right or left, didn't matter. Where did he find himself? Between the sticks. If you're not, if it's on the opposite side, what are you doing? Are you picking your nose or are you between the sticks? Get between the sticks, because things can happen. This is simple coaching messages, Elliot. Honestly, it really is. I don't get fixated on sides. I get fixated on actions and how do you solve problems that are in front of you. If you tell me, which I know you're not gonna, that Martinelli is better by overthinking in these one-on-ones or being instinctive, it's an easy message, isn't it? And then you can decide where he wants to play, given on any given day, given the health of our players, which is a moving newsreel.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see if Mikel sticks with that. He's got some big decisions to make there, and there were just a lot of lovely passages of play once we got it to 3-1 in this game. I don't think we need to go through all of them. But by the way, Gabriel Magalhaes had a beautiful chip ball over the top to Leo Trossard that led to Martinelli's goal. I think winds up being the big chance missed Rice shot Martinelli goal. It was one of those. Really, really good though. He also had the header off the bar from the corner. Again, the corners look very good. And yeah, Clive? Mm-hmm.
I just want to say, I've got a question for you two, really, because I really enjoyed how we attacked. I really did. I really felt it was, we went long, we spun in, we went down both sides.
Good tempo too, pace.
Yeah,
we did it at speed.
It. Yeah. I like something I said on another show. I sort of said, we can't be afraid to give the ball away, because we'll win it back. When we do, we can go again. Sometimes I felt in those Everton games, nothing wrong with it, but I wasn't sure if we were giving the ball away enough. It sounds dumb, right? But you know what I mean, because you can counter press there. Now that was a way to beat Everton, by giving the ball away. Tim will know. We've had the same discussions with Jonas's Arsenal. Did we give the ball away enough for the women's team? I felt we were too risky. We weren't taking on the risk. And I really enjoyed his performance. Gabriel can't make that pass unless Leo does a dummy run and attacks the space in behind, which he doesn't always do. And I think this is where we need to get to. That's why I always go back to the group. If we get the group working like this, that's the only way we're going to survive missing out on our best player. Because that's the truth. If we can, the probabilities say it's going to hurt us somewhere, but can we cover it by being really forceful, maybe a bit more risky? Maybe. Can we do it? I'm on the positive side that we can. But I still think we need to go to YouTube, mate, and do some scouting. We need to add one more.
Yeah, well, if for no other reason than the numbers. I mean, there's just the point I made about, are you going to play all these players? You got 4 forwards, essentially. You're going to play them in both League Cup ties and the FA Cup tie and the Champions League. By the way, we're not going to have Bukayo probably for our first Champions League tie, whether that's in February or March. And you want your players raring to go at that time. You're going to need
that last 16 you're talking about, Elliot.
Yeah.
The last 16. Yeah,
he will miss at least one leg of that. I would think maybe both. So,
okay.
Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't look great. We'll see though. I mean, look, I am Whiskers. That's the whole thing here. I am a worrier. So maybe he's fine. Maybe he'll be back for for the next game. We'll see.
We are talking. He's going to play in 2025, aren't we? We are talking down. We're just checking in with you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love Mikel saying we expect he'll be back this season. That doesn't. Don't say that. It's just scary. But
that was the question, mate, that drove him down that path. That's
okay. Well, good. Just don't even answer it, mate. So yeah. I mean, and there were interesting moments throughout this game. I think I did like the way we attacked and the tempo with which we did it. I do think you need the opposition to come out at you a little bit and be willing to do stuff. I mean, by the way, Chelsea's dynamic attack that everyone's saying was better than ours. Did you see the score of their game against Everton? 0-0. 0-0. When a team's organized and low blocks you, it isn't easy. And by the way, their 0-0 against Everton, from an XG standpoint, way worse than ours. Okay? So, and by the way, like, I'm not saying we should compare ourselves to Chelsea, but that's a team that people are saying, look at how they score. Look at how free scoring they are. Like, okay, you could say that. I mean, we're basically right behind them in goals scored, and our goal difference is identical. So, tomato, tomato. But my point is simply the opposition has to play a game that enables you to do this. And so the good news is Palace did, and we took advantage. I will say, by the way, Lacroix, is that his name? Lacroix, their defender? He looked real good. That's a good player. He had one 1v1 with
the last 2 months.
He got their player of the month for the last 2 months.
Yeah. Really do well.
Yeah, really, really good player. And like Jesus was in at one point, and he did a really good job to use his pace and his strength to catch up to him and take it off Jesus' foot. Like I just thought he looked, of the Palace defenders, he looked like the one who really had it going, which is interesting given that, Gahey was the guy that they expensively acquired. A couple last little notes from this game, and then I do want to just touch on the Liverpool Spurs game because it's quite hilarious and where our league season stands now. But Tim, Ethan Nwaneri came on and played number 9, basically. That's really interesting. Mikel had spoken about him being a 9 potentially in the future prior to this game. So I wonder if it was a little bit cheeky from Mikel, where he's like, well, we got a big lead. You know what? I'm going to play him at 9 so people can't call my bluff, say I'm fibbing. But I just think he pops when he comes on. And I think the things he does look Saka-y to me. I believe he can be a midfielder long-term, but Mikel said 9. So he sees him maybe even one line up. Any sort of thoughts on, I realize at that point the game state's a little weird and the game's already won, but what do you think of that cameo and the fact that he played in that role?
Yeah, I was really intrigued when he gave that answer the other day. I was at Colney, and I think that was in the embargoed section because I was there for Rene Slager's press conference and Arteta's was just before. So I heard all the journalists come back into the kind of media room, and that's what they were all talking about. That was the comment that really stuck out to people, and it made me really think about it. And I actually think it's long term. I think it's a really clever idea because I think that when you have these kind of academy players, what they are is very malleable. And we've seen it loads of times, right? Jack Wilshere in the youth team was a 10. We never played him as a 10. We dropped him back as an 8. Why did we do that? Because that's where we needed a player. We had Fabregas. We didn't need another Fabregas. So we dropped him back a line because that's what we needed in the team. We had Denilson there. We had a half-fit Diaby. That's where we had the gap. Ashley Cole was a winger. There was no, like we had Robert Pires and Freddie Ljungberg. He's not playing on the wing, but Silvinio's passport was made of blue tack, so we need a left back. So that's what. So like it won't even like a good academy player wasn't quite on that level. Iwobi, where did Iwobi play? Iwobi played where we needed him to play. So he played a bit in midfield. He played a bit on the left wing. And what are we doing with Myles Lewis-Skelly? Like there probably isn't as much of a space in midfield, particularly if you want to bring through Nwaneri as well. So what have we done? We've created a way where him and Nwaneri can have opportunities, and we've gone, okay. We've got Calafiori, Tomiyasu. I mean, he's not going to get another contract, is he? Put it that way. Zinchenko's on his way out. There's a potential gap here for an inverting left back, so let's do that. And if you're looking at someone like Nwaneri, who could play on the right wing, but we've got Saka there. He could play right 8, but we've got Ødegaard there. Those positions long term are not coming up in the team. So, I know, Clive, you talked about, could he be a left 8, for example, one day, and maybe that's where he'll settle into the team. But I think if you've got a player like that, the cleverest thing you can do is turn him into a centre forward, because as we're seeing right now, that is the most difficult and expensive position to fill in the market. And I was thinking the other day about, we're talking about should Arsenal have signed another attacker? Should they have taken a risk? And I've seen like people say, we risk on defenders. We hit the gamble button with Calafiori, for example. But it's like Calafiori costs 50 million. The striker version of that costs twice that. It's a much bigger gamble. So, like, if you basically, this is a really long way, Elliot, of saying if you can produce a striker from your youth team, do it. And by the way, nobody emphasises my point better than Saka himself. How did he get in the team? Left back, because all the left backs were injured. And then what happened? Pepe was crap. Willian was crap. We needed a right winger. Go and play on the right wing. And that's what you should do with your really talented academy players. You should look for where your gaps are in the squad or where it's difficult to go into the market. And for me, the best outcome is that Nwaneri is either a left 8 or a number 9, because I think those are the positions that are probably coming up in the next year or two.
Yeah. I also think the hardest positions for academy players to come in and thrive are center back and center midfield. I think they're the most, in center midfield is just the most tactically complex, and you need the widest range of skills. Center back, the problem is you make a mistake, you're dead. And all of a sudden your life can feel like it's caving in on you. I think the easiest position to come in as a young player is off the wing. And Arsene Wenger used to do that all the time, right? Players would come in, they'd be right wing, they'd be left wing. Bentner did, Ramsey did. I think if Ethan Nwaneri gets a bit of run at right wing, I actually think that's going to be a fun place for him to play. But Clive, what are your thoughts on what Tim had to say, Nwaneri's cameo, and maybe where he's going to play?
Yeah, this is where a shout out to the academy, really, because I can remember when they first started to play Myles as an inverted left back, and I'm thinking, what are you doing? I want to win this game. And what are you doing that for? Literally, I was thinking that. And I can remember in the FA Youth Cup run when Ethan was playing centre forward. Again, I'm thinking, no, don't play him there. You know, he can play better as a 10 and we can do better from deep areas. Sometimes we played him centre forward and he didn't touch the ball for a long time. But what he is, Elliot, he's a natural scorer. He can whack that ball in that net. You know, there's no doubt about it. That's in him. He wants to hit that target hard. When he's at the top end of the pitch, he's looking to score. You know, when other guys are top end of the pitch, if there's a pass on, I'm looking for that first. Can now start moving. And if the ball comes back to me and I need to shoot, I can do that. When Yeri gets the edge of that box, he's thinking about how can I get my shot off? And so there's a different mentality about him. My thought process on number 9s and double false 9s, etc. I think number 9s as we know it are going to be less and less important. I think the half space is where the goals are going to be. The wide forwards are where it's going to be at. And the Salahs, the Rashfords, just to cause a bit of a riot, those sort of players, the Manes, you know, the Sakas, the half space killers. That's where the goals are, right? So if you can control the interior, you control it with people who can look after the ball, tight ability, move the ball around. We had a fantastic period last year with Trossard playing as a 9. He's not a 9, but he looked after the ball and was on the edge of things. And when the ball came for him to shoot, well, it was in the net, wasn't it? Right? So this is why I think the big investment for Arsenal will be a wide player, you know, of some sort, a wide forward of some sort. So yeah, so I don't think we just lucked up on it. And also, Arteta said something in a press conference recently. He said the words, "What do you think about Ethan and Myles?" And he sort of said, "Yeah, it's really strange. Sometimes you find some really special players, but sometimes you find players that are in the same position." And I think this was about another academy player that's up and coming, who is a true number 10, mate. He is a true number 10. And so if you're smart, you need to be creating pathways for both of them, you know, really smart to create. And you can't have everyone playing in that number 10 position, because I don't know if you notice, our skipper, who's not bad, plays in that position as well. Do you see what I mean? And so you have to create that pathway and room. So it could be so interesting what we do. But listen, the first world problems these are, mate, to find 2 academy kids born within a stone throw of the ground that can play to Champions League level in the same year is incredible. Someone's done some really good work. Really good work.
Yeah. I mean, look, we are in a remarkable position with these players because we are a team that expects 90 points in Champions League final type performance. And they are not just part of the team, they're playing in important moments at 17 and 18 years old. So it is quite unique. I think we can move on from this game and finish with just a little bit of big picture stuff. First of all, it is Christmas time. It is New Year's time. Take a moment and enjoy the misery of United and Spurs fans. Try to enjoy it. They are terrible. Like, they are terrible, terrible, terrible teams with terrible players. In the case of Spurs, they have a terrible manager. A manager who thinks his job is just what they do in the attacking third and has no consideration for anything else they do. They are terrible. And when you sit there and complain about Arsenal, and we all do it because we want to win the title, boo-hoo, we want a title. Of course we do. And you see us with the second best goal difference in the league, the fewest goals allowed in the league. We're 3 goals fewer than Liverpool and Chelsea at the top. We're 6 points off the top. We're 2 points off Chelsea. I know Liverpool have game in hand. It's all still there for us, even despite the injuries and the Reds and the challenges. We're very, very good. We have academy players who are good. It's all very good. And they are very, very bad. Very bad. They are so, so bad. Manchester City lost again. So bad. So bad. It's so bad. And you should make sure you enjoy it. I think United don't look any better, which is really cool. Spurs look just hilarious. And the only thing that worries me, really, is that they're going to come to the Emirates with a different manager and they're not going to play YOLO ball. But if they come to the Emirates with Ange and play YOLO ball like they did against Liverpool, that I might finally get. I won't get my 10-0. I'll get a 10-4, but that's fine. I'd take it. So, Tim, quickly on the state of play in the league. Let's keep it tightly focused on us for a minute. Liverpool batter Spurs. And as I watch Liverpool, here's what I see. I see a fine team that has flaws, that has the best player in the world putting together what might wind up being the best season in the history of the league. He has 15 goals and 11 assists through 16 games. 15 goals and 11 assists for Mohamed Salah in 16 games. I mean, it's insane. I mean, this guy, and there's no reason to think it's going to stop. He could literally finish with 30 plus goals and 20 plus assists. And what do you do when a player's in that form? So thoughts on Liverpool, the way they dismantled really an unprofessional Tottenham is the best way I can say it. And the extent to which sometimes when a good team has the best player, that's the calculus. You know, that's how you get to a title.
Yeah, we won a couple of league titles 20 odd years ago in very, very kind of similar way because we had a guy who could do 30 goals and 20 assists. Yeah, I've been of the opinion for a while, and maybe I'm moving more this way with like the Saka injury and everything. I'm trying not to think about Liverpool too much, partly for my own mental health, but also because I felt like Arsenal needs to get back to being Arsenal. And, I kind of want to worry about the title race when I feel we're a bit more in it, maybe when we're a little bit closer or something happens to Liverpool, like, Salah's hamstring falling off the tendon or something like that. Like,
Salah and Van Dijk, there you go. They finish on 75 points.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I've always been of the opinion that like, if Salah stays fit, we probably can't do it. And if he doesn't, then maybe there's a chance. Again, the Saka injury maybe puts that into a bit more perspective. But yeah, and look, they do have weaknesses. They have had like a bit of positive variance maybe on their side throughout the season. I'm not saying that's the reason they're top of the league, but they've had a bit of that positive variance. And if we're absolutely objective about it, which we don't have to be because we're Arsenal fans, but if you took the Arsenal out of it, you'd say that Liverpool deserve that. Liverpool do deserve for what they've done over the last 6-7 years and what's probably been taken away from them and what might have even been taken away from them unfairly. As much as it really sucks that the one season City fall apart, we get all these injuries and like the stars just don't seem to want to align for us ever to win the league again. Like whatever deal we did with the devil to get that invincible season, we still haven't paid off that particular mortgage. But if you looked at it objectively, they deserve because they've deserved another league title over this period. So if it's them, on one hand I can live with it. On the other hand, obviously it sucks that it isn't us. But I don't think this is kind of their last dance, I think, with this team. Whereas we'll get another opportunity or two. But the Spurs thing, I think the Spurs thing at the same time as like Southampton and Russell Martin as well. I think what's really interesting is how many managers have now decided, and I guess because they get sacked so easily and they're always having to think about their next job, how many managers like Ange think that their team is there to serve their philosophy and not vice versa. I think we've moved into a really interesting moment in coaching where there are some coaches who think the players and the team are there to serve their philosophy, which I consider almost grossly self-serving. And I've said before many, many times, the thing I value most about Arteta's coaching is I don't see that. I see, how do we maximise the talent? How do we win? That's what I see from Arteta. And I don't like that bit of the game, so I'm not going to do it. Oh, I've got a philosophy, and if you guys have to lose a couple of games for my philosophy, like if I'm a player, I'm thinking, screw you, mate. I've got a short career in the elite, and you're telling me I've got to waste seasons pissing about with your bloody philosophy because you want you want something on your gravestone or something. Piss off, mate. I'm not playing for you. I want someone who's going to help me win. And I think some of these managers are really missing the point, and they've really started to flip it. And his post-match interview where he's just talking about like, oh, I've got some injuries at the back, so there's nothing I can do. Even when those defenders are fit, you're still conceding loads of goals anyway. B, what's the point in having you then? If I were Daniel Levy, I'd be like, right, so sorry, we've got 3 injuries and you're saying you can't do anything. Why am I paying you? What am I employing you for? What is your salary for if you refuse to try and sort that out and you just shrug your shoulders and say, I can't do anything? I'd sack him on the spot. I'd just be like, well, what am I paying you for? That's your job. Your job is to cope with this stuff. And it's the same for us right now, right? That we've been trying to do all season. I don't know how well we'll do it, and I think it's going to be difficult. But I'm absolutely convinced this manager will try, and he won't be staring at his shoes saying, oh, there's nothing I can do. Like he'll bloody well try to come up with something, and he'll try and earn his money, unlike Ange Postecoglou. And all I can say as an Arsenal fan is, may he reign long at that club, because I think he's a joke, and I hope he's there for a very long time.
Yeah, I picked a 6-2 in that game. It turned out to be 6-3. But the reason is he has Jed Spence, Archie Gray, Radu Dragusin, and Pedro Porro protecting Fraser Forster, whatever. You got to protect them.
They might as well have Fraser in goal, to be honest with you.
Exactly. They'd be better off with a therapist back there. So, yeah, it's insane the way he does it, and it makes me appreciating having a manager who does it another way. As I mentioned, Chelsea got held by Everton, which is great. You want to hear a really, really funny thing about Everton? This will blow your mind. Last 6 games, 4 0-0s, a 4-0 win and a 4-0 loss. A 4-0 win, a 4-0 loss, and 4 0-0s. Very, very strange. So, yeah, and United, by the way, this is kind of funny. Spurs are 11th with a plus 14 goal difference. United are 13th. They're back to minus. They're back to negative. Clive, as you look over this league, it's pretty easy to see there, but for the grace of God, go I. You appoint the wrong guy. You sign some of the wrong players. You play the wrong way, and you're Spurs, you're United, and you're absolutely adrift with no hope of finding your way back. Thankfully, we're not there. It is a 6-point gap. Liverpool do look very good right now. They are playing with the best player in the league. I do think that there is this bit of fear I have of like, we need to sign someone in January, and I agree with that. But I also don't think we should panic by someone with the league in mind, because it is a 6-point gap with the game in hand, and you could panic by someone who needs 6 weeks to get integrated, and then Saka's back and regret that you signed the guy to begin with. You don't do a Dennis Suarez loan is sort of my point. What are your thoughts on the state of the league right now, and Liverpool, maybe Chelsea, United and Spurs in the mud? Anything?
Yeah, I don't think we're the Dennis Suarez club anymore. I think we've gone past that now, and we're a bit more intelligent in our purchases. I find the whole coaching side of things, the league thing, really interesting, because for every Ange, there's a Iraola, right? And look what they're doing at Bournemouth. I mean, that is the story. Manchester United are not the story. We knew they were a basket case. Bournemouth is the story. Where are they finding these players from? They got some wonderful players there. The guy that Husin, the guy that scores, I think it's a Spain 21 player, outstanding player. The left back that we're interested in, Liverpool interested in him. I didn't hear about him. I think I saw him in the summer. I thought he looked quite good, but I thought he's okay. But then
Can I stop you for a second? I just want to ask, I mean, are we maybe a little unlucky in that with Forest and Bournemouth being as high up the table as they are, having dream seasons, those are clubs that have some players that might have been interesting, for example, Bournemouth in particular, right? Like, maybe you want to go for someone there, but their league position means they're unlikely to be sellers, especially in January.
Yeah, you can't just go up to these clubs anymore. The money's involved in the Premier League means they can hold on to them. They don't have to sell them. You have to go and do your work way ahead of time and prepare yourself. Much like Real Madrid do with free transfers. You got to do your work well ahead in advance to position yourself to take these players. You can't just turn up like you used to and just say, all right, there's 40 million, we'll take your striker off you, you deal with it. It's just not going to happen. So I do find some of the man-to-man stuff that Iraola's doing is really interesting. I do feel there is a level of copying in coaching, or globalization is a phrase I use in coaching, which means most teams now have gone away from 4-4-2 and they're going to 4-2-4, being more aggressive, which is forcing longer play, forcing you to go into wide areas, force you to take more risks. When you do come back into the centre, people then fall back in. Some teams are doing the Everton 4-5-1, staying in a low mid block, doing that, forcing you to work harder and then try to catch you on the counter. The methodologies and the principles are becoming quite similar. And then what does that lead to? That leads to, for me, individualistic play, instinctive play, being confident, being trusted to show your talent. It becomes a talent game, which we have talent. Some of that's been underperforming, some of that's been overburdened and overperforming. But we haven't had them all available at the right time. So I do find the league really interesting. I think Bournemouth are interesting. I think Brighton are also interested. I think Brentford have hit a patch. They're good at home, and they're starting to fall away a little bit. Newcastle are rediscovering themselves again. They're an interesting club as a whole. Which direction are they going to go? Is the Saudi money going to stay there? There's lots of things the same, but lots of things that are different. And at the top of it is Liverpool, the most serene club of all. Just serenely chugging along. Their players are in good shape. They lose Konate. They just cruise in Joe Gomez, and he happens to play okay. They are starting to concede goals, particularly away from home. So watch this space, Elliot. Once your data boys get hold of that, you'll see that trend. They are conceding away from home consistently, but Salah keeps digging them out. And he has, talk about we're dependent on Saka, he has an extraordinary dependence upon him. Extraordinary dependence, but greater than any other player in the league, alongside with Virgil van Dijk. So they are very, very much held up by two long poles in the tent. And if that changes, it's going to be so interesting to see what happens there. So yeah, I don't take Mickey out of Tottenham because we know what they are, mate. I've been around. It's Spurs, right? We know what they are. How they are so loved in the media. I just want to know. It's almost patronising. The sort of stuff they get thrown at them. So yeah, so I'm still in the place where, let's see how this season rolls. Let's see how this season rolls. I don't think the season is over for Arsenal Football Club, for one. I think there's work to do for us to do. Lots of tactical solutions for us to find. But that's the stuff we all like, isn't it? The stuff that we don't know. That's the stuff we all like, right? I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've been handed a little bit of good fortune, by the way, just a tiny bit with the way our holiday program breaks out. We don't play again until Friday. Then it's January 1st. So we have 4 more days after that. Then it's Brighton 3 days later. So I'm not saying it's amazing, but it can be worse. Like, it can be worse. It's Ipswich at home next too. So, that's a chance to hopefully create some serenity, to Clive's point. We'll see what happens. I mean, Mikel, by the way, did say we have a very small squad. We went into the season with a very small squad. That's a pointed comment. He knows what he's saying. He's saying, I didn't get what I needed. Now you could say some of that blame falls on him. I have no idea, but you don't say we had a very small squad unless you believe you needed more and you didn't get it. So that may have repercussions for January. He might be trying to make a point to the people that make the decisions in January. We're going to do a transfer mailbag on Thursday's pod, I believe is the plan. Look, we play Friday. Want to get you a pod on Thursday. Realistically, you're not going to get a pod. You're going to get an instant reaction Friday after the Ipswich game, but you're going to get a main pod Thursday. So if you want the Ipswich pod, that's going to be on Friday. And then we're going to go back to sort of our regularly scheduled broadcast times, because there's a lot of moving parts around the holiday calendar. So we'll do the best we can around that. Feels like a power rankings week to me too, with Chelsea drawing and Spurs losing and United losing.
Power rankings, your rant.
Well, all right, maybe we do something else. Maybe the countdown. People like the countdown. We could do that. That could be a fun one, and we could just throw some Spurs stuff in there. All right, let's leave it there. That's plenty on a Monday with Christmas knocking on the door. I hope you get everything you've ever wanted, including maybe some transfers in January. Thank you, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me everywhere. Gunner, we love you. We'll talk to you after Arsenal 10, Ipswich 0.